January 8, 1905. 5th Avenue and 65th Street. Snow falls on limestone. Inside, electric lights blaze through French windows. Carriages arrive, wheels crunching ice, footmen opening doors. 800 guests crowd into a ballroom built for 1,200. At the top of the grand staircase, Caroline Astor waits. Purple velvet trimmed with sable. Diamonds at her throat, her wrists, her hair. Jewels that once belonged to a beheaded queen. She's 74 years old. She has ruled New York society for 30 years. Tonight, she will descend these marble steps one last time as the Mrs. Astor. Beautiful. Yes, but that's just the facade. Behind these walls, the arithmetic doesn't work. Servants earning $18 a month keep 65 fireplaces burning. Coal arrives by the ton. Property taxes climb as Manhattan transforms from residential enclave to commercial district. The fortune that built this palace came from 10 tons of Turkish opium smuggled into China. The mansion will stand exactly 30 years. Then, demolished. 3 years from now, Caroline will descend this same staircase dressed for parties that will never happen, greeting guests who've been dead for decades. Her mind will retreat to the past. 7 years from now, her son will board the Titanic and drown trying to save his pregnant, teenage wife. 21 years from now, her grandson will sell the mansion because he cannot afford what he calls the extravagant expense of maintaining it. But tonight, the chandeliers glow. The orchestra plays. Caroline descends. The guests bow. No one knows this is the end. Can money buy permanence? What does it cost to stay on top? Who actually paid for the Astor fortune? And how much does a dynasty cost when you add up everything? The opium, the rent, the labor, the grief, the fall. The mansion is gone now. A temple stands where she descended her stairs in diamonds. The fortune dissipated, the family scattered. What remains? Place names, memories, a warning. Let's begin. To understand the mansion that Caroline Astor will one day lose her mind in, you have to understand where the money came from. Not inheritance, not luck. Opium. Canton Harbor, 1816. The air tastes of salt and smoke. Beyond the legitimate port, where Chinese officials inspect tea shipments and silk bales, the water darkens. The Macedonian rides at anchor, an American fur company vessel, its hold empty of furs. Small boats approach in darkness. No lanterns. The transfer takes minutes. 10 tons of Turkish opium, wrapped and crated, moves from ship to boat to shore. Bribery is common. Officials who have taken payment look the other way. China banned opium 17 years ago. Dealers face execution. Users are forced to wear heavy wooden collars, endure public beatings. The law is clear. The smuggling is easy. The man behind the shipment is John Jacob Astor. Born Johann Jakob Astor in Waldorf, Germany, 1763. Arrived in America in 1784 with little more than 7 flutes and a new name. Built a fur trading empire, the American Fur Company, stretching from the Great Lakes to the Pacific. By 1816, he's worth over $250,000. Rich, yes, but not rich enough. He wants more. Turkish opium is lower quality than the Indian variety the British control, but it has value. Dealers cut Indian opium with Turkish supply to stretch their inventory. The markup is extraordinary. Single voyages generate profits exceeding anything the fur trade ever produced. China accepts opium instead of silver, solving a currency problem and creating an addiction crisis. Astor doesn't stop at 10 tons. Between 1816 and 1825, he sells hundreds of thousands of pounds. By 1818, Americans control 1/3 of all opium consumed in China. A rival Boston firm declares, "We know of no one but Astor we fear." He even sends ships to the Persian Gulf seeking additional sources. The business is lucrative. The business is reliable. The Chinese demand seems unlimited. And then, the cost. By the 1830s, 3 million Chinese smoke opium. By 1890, 10% of China's entire population is addicted. Families sell children to buy the drug. The opium wars follow, killing thousands. A scholar will later write, perhaps the opium traders' inability to see most Chinese as other than menials or curiosities helped them keep faceless the hundreds of thousands of Chinese who craved the drug they sold. Astor doesn't only smuggle to China, he imports opium to the United States, advertising openly in New York newspapers. No federal laws regulate drug sales until 1914. Patent medicine companies create cure-all remedies loaded with opium and morphine. Doctors prescribe opiates freely. By 1895, roughly 1 in 200 Americans is addicted. Middle-class white women comprise the largest group, prescribed opiates for female problems and childbirth without anyone recognizing the addiction risk. The foundation is poison. The fortune is built on suffering an ocean away, suffering you never have to see. In 1819, at peak profitability, Astor abruptly ends his China operations. Why? He's found something better: Manhattan real estate. He uses the drug money to buy land, purchasing properties along planned water lines and transportation routes. As New York expands northward, these investments make him vastly richer than opium smuggling ever could. He buys and buys and buys. By 1834, he creates America's first family trust, 125 parcels of Manhattan real estate. The business model is simple: lease land for 20 years to sub-landlords. They build whatever they want, they pay property taxes, they maintain everything. At year 20, the buildings belong to the Astors. Rent flows in without construction costs, without maintenance, without labor. It's a machine. Feed it land, extract wealth. March 29, 1848. John Jacob Astor lies dying at age 84. Someone asks if he would have done things differently. Yes, he says. He would have bought every inch of Manhattan. He dies the richest man in the United States. $20 million, roughly $795 million in today's currency, 0.9% of the entire US GDP at the time. The bulk goes to his second son, William Backhouse Astor. His eldest son is deemed mentally unstable. The fortune is secure, the method is proven, the cost is hidden. A question begins to form, unspoken but present in every dollar that follows. Who actually paid for this? The answer: people whose names no one will remember, whose suffering funded marble staircases and crystal chandeliers and a ballroom built for 1,200. The opium paid for everything: the mansion, the jewels, the power to decide who matters in New York, every brick, every chandelier, every servant's wage. All of it traces back to 10 tons of Turkish opium and the hundreds of thousands of pounds that followed. Beautiful? Yes, but that's just the facade. Behind the beauty, addiction, exploitation, families destroyed. The foundation is dark. The structure built on it will shine. For a while. William Backhouse Astor inherits $20 million and a proven system. He doesn't need to invent a new fortune. He needs to protect the old one and make it grow. He knows how. The machine his father built keeps running. 125 parcels of Manhattan real estate held in trust, leased to sub-landlords for 20 years. The sub-landlords arrive with ambition and borrowed capital. They build brownstones, tenements, shops. They pay property taxes. They handle maintenance. They chase tenants for rent. The Astors do nothing. At year 20, the lease expires. The buildings stay. The Astors own them. The sub-landlords start over somewhere else if they can. Rent flows in like a tide, steady and relentless, month after month, year after year. No coal to buy, no workers to manage, no structures to maintain, just ownership. Just the land beneath buildings other people built with other people's money. By 1867, William Backhouse Astor Sr. owns more than 700 houses in Manhattan. Not buildings he constructed, buildings that appeared on land he owns, erected by men who will never own the ground beneath them. The nickname forms, spoken with admiration by some, resentment by others. The landlords of New York. It's wealth that compounds without effort. The city expands northward. Property values climb. Land purchased for hundreds now appraises for thousands. William watches and waits and collects. The machine requires no labor from him. It requires only that he not sell. He doesn't. In 1856, he gifts his son, William Backhouse Astor Jr., a parcel of land at the corner of 5th Avenue and 34th Street. A wedding present. William Jr. has just married Caroline Webster Schermerhorn, daughter of a wealthy shipping family. On that lot, they build what contemporaries describe as a plain 4-story townhouse. Dull-looking. A large, brown 5-story box, 50 feet by 107 feet. Brownstone facade, Nova Scotia freestone for window dressings and cornices. Understated compared to what will come later. But understatement is strategy. Caroline Astor doesn't need to announce her wealth with marble and gold. Her family owns the land beneath half of Lower Manhattan. The brownstone's modesty makes the power inside more potent. You don't build a palace to prove you matter. You build a plain house and decide who gets invited inside. And Caroline decides. Behind the brownstone exterior, the interior tells a different story. 3 connected drawing rooms. A ballroom added later, replacing the stables, where Caroline will sit on a red silk divan like a throne. The ballroom holds exactly 400 guests, not 399, not 401, 400. The number becomes a weapon. The 400, the exact count of people who matter in New York. If you're not invited, you don't exist. The machine compounds, not just financially, socially. William Sr. continues acquiring. He builds Rokeby Mansion upstate, a country estate for the family. The holdings spread. By the time he dies in 1875, his estate is valued at nearly $50 million, more than double what his father left. And he didn't smuggle a single pound of opium. He didn't build a single factory. He just owned the land and collected the rent. The wealth feels clean now, generational, legitimate. The opium is 2 generations back, easily forgotten. What remains is property, respectability, power. The system is perfect. It requires almost nothing and produces almost everything. But it requires one thing absolutely: that people keep paying rent on land they'll never own. Who are these people? Immigrants arriving by the thousands, laborers, shopkeepers, families cramming into tenements built on Astor land by sub-landlords who extracted every possible inch of rentable space. They pay monthly, they pay yearly, they pay for decades. They improve the buildings with their own money. They raise children in rooms that heat poorly and ventilate worse. At year 20, the lease expires. The building becomes Astor property, fully improved, fully occupied, fully profitable. The tenants never see William Backhouse Astor. He never sees them. The rent collector comes. The money flows upward. The machine hums. Caroline, meanwhile, transforms the brownstone into the center of New York society. Not through size, through selectivity. Her January balls become the event. To be invited is to arrive. To be excluded is to be erased. She commissions a life-size portrait of herself by Carolus Duran. Guests are received beneath it in the drawing room. The symbolism is clear. You are in her house, under her gaze, subject to her judgment. Her husband, William Jr., appears rarely. He prefers horses, yachts, travel to Europe. The marriage is functional, not affectionate. Caroline rules the household. William rules nothing. He seems content with the arrangement, or at least he doesn't fight it. The system works, the fortune grows, the social machinery tightens. By 1890, when the next generation takes control, the Astor name means two things: landlord and gatekeeper. They own the land. They decide who belongs. The cost is invisible. The Chinese opium addicts are an ocean away and decades past. The tenants are nameless, faceless, the necessary friction that makes the machine run. The sub-landlords who build and lose are just bad businessmen. Proof that the system rewards the smart and punishes the weak. No one asks who paid for this. No one asks what it cost to keep it running. The question doesn't form because the answer is everywhere and nowhere. It's in every tenement, every lease, every rent payment, every building that transfers ownership without the builder ever owning a single brick. The machine is invisible. That's the point. Wealth that appears to generate itself. Power that seems natural. Ordained, deserved. A brownstone that looks modest but controls everything. The foundation was opium. The structure is rent. The facade is respectability. And behind it all the arithmetic that makes fortunes. Own what others need. Charge them forever. Never let them own it themselves. Beautiful? Perhaps not. But effective. And effective, for the Astors, is all that matters. For now. By 1870, Caroline Astor has decided something. She will be the arbiter. Not just wealthy. Not just prominent. The authority. The gatekeeper. The woman who decides who belongs in New York society and who does not. She finds a partner in Ward McAllister, a lawyer turned social climber with an aristocratic obsession and a talent for cruelty. Together they create the 400. The name is deliberate. Precisely 400 people, the exact number who can comfortably fit in Caroline's ballroom at 34th Street. Not an estimate, a limit, a weapon. The criteria are specific. Your family must have money for at least 3 generations. New money doesn't count. Making a fortune yourself doesn't matter. Your grandfather must have been rich. This immediately excludes most of America. It excludes strivers, entrepreneurs, self-made millionaires. It excludes anyone whose wealth is too fresh, too earned, too visible in its making. It excludes Jews entirely, merchants, anyone in retail. The reasoning is circular and absolute. They're excluded because they don't belong, and they don't belong because they're excluded. The system works because Caroline enforces it without apology. Her January balls become the test. Invitations go out with a simple message. Mrs. Astor at home, January 9th at 10 o'clock. No elaboration needed. If you receive it, you exist. If you don't, you're erased. Guests arrive at 11, typically, after midnight before everyone has come. They enter through the wide hall ablaze with light. They proceed to the first of 3 connected drawing rooms where Caroline receives them, standing beneath her life-size portrait by Carolus Duran. She descends the staircase glittering like the great chandelier, heavily covered with diamonds. Diamonds at her throat, diamonds at her wrists, diamonds in her hair. The spectacle is calculated. The message, I have more than you can imagine, and I decide whether you matter. For 3 decades, it works. But spectacle requires infrastructure. Beauty requires labor. The machinery behind Caroline's glittering descents is neither glittering nor beautiful. Step past the drawing rooms, move beyond the ballroom, walk the corridors the guests never see. 20 servants, minimum, keep the brownstone alive. Some households employ more. Each has a role, a wage, a place in the hierarchy. The butler stands at the top of the servant ranks, managing 4 or more assistants, responsible for wine, silver, and the male staff. His salary isn't recorded in the guides, but it's the highest, perhaps comparable to the superintendent housekeeper. The housekeeper manages the female servants, authority over maids, laundresses, and kitchen staff. The wage isn't specified, but the responsibility is total. Head laundress, $30 a month. She oversees washing not just clothes, but rugs, bed covers, linens. Everything is boiled, scrubbed, laid out to dry, or pinned up. The work is relentless. The steam burns. The lye cracks hands. Assistant laundress, $18 a month. Live-in maids, $18 to $25 a month, including room and board. They clean, change linens, tend fires, answer call buttons, move invisibly through the house so the family never sees the labor that makes comfort possible. $18 a month. Caroline's diamond necklace costs thousands. A single ball costs more than a maid earns in a year. The inequality isn't hidden. It's built into the structure. The servants know. The family knows. No one speaks it. The working conditions are documented in household management guides, memoirs, and contemporary accounts. Servant quarters are near the roof, sooty, either too hot in summer or freezing in winter. Not a choice place for a family member. The rooms are small, poorly ventilated, uncomfortable. The message is clear. You are here to work, not to live well. The expectations are absolute. Servants are to be silent unless spoken to, invisible unless needed. They must anticipate needs without being asked. A good servant is one you never notice. Discretion is paramount. Personal opinions are never expressed. In British households, the deference system is even more rigid, but American households import the same rules. A single mistake ends employment. Breaking a dish, falling ill, attracting scandal. Any of these means instant dismissal without reference. No second chances, no appeals. The servant leaves that day. Finding new work without a reference is nearly impossible. This creates a paradox called the servant problem. Wealthy families complain constantly about difficulty finding and keeping good staff. But the system ensures turnover. The wages are low, the conditions are poor, the power imbalance is total. American servants, unlike their British counterparts, see domestic service as temporary, a stepping stone, something to escape, not a career. They leave as soon as they can. Marry up, find factory work, anything. The machine requires constant feeding. New servants replace old ones. The cycle continues. The brownstone hums. Caroline's husband, William Backhouse Astor Jr., is mostly absent. His interests run to horses, yachts, and European travel. He avoids his wife. The marriage is cold, functional, joyless. He spends months away. Caroline rules alone. She seems to prefer it. April 25, 1892. William dies in Paris of a brain aneurysm. He is 62. Caroline's response, according to later accounts, is to intensify her social dominance. Not grief, not withdrawal, intensification. She has lost a husband. She will not lose control. The balls continue. The exclusions continue. The 400 remains exactly 400. Behind it all, the servants work 6-day weeks, long hours, for $18 a month. They sleep near the roof in rooms that are too hot or too cold. They carry coal for 65 fireplaces. They wash linens for a family that changes clothes multiple times a day. They cook, clean, serve, disappear. One mistake, and they're gone. Caroline descends the staircase in diamonds. The chandelier glitters. The guests applaud. Below stairs, the laundress scrubs. The maid stokes the fire. The butler polishes silver. The machinery turns, invisible and essential. What does social power actually require? Money, yes. But more than that, It requires people willing to work for $18 a month in rooms near the roof. It requires a system that dismisses them for a single mistake. It requires forgetting they exist except when you need them. The spectacle is real. The diamonds are real. The power is real. The cost is real. And the cost, as always, is borne by people whose names no one records. Beautiful. Yes, but that's just the facade. Behind the beauty, $18 a month, 6-day weeks, rooms that are too hot or too cold, and the constant threat of instant dismissal. The machine works, but it works because someone, always, is paying. By 1890, Caroline Astor has ruled New York society for 2 decades. She is the Mrs. Astor, not a Mrs. Astor. The definite article matters. It announces singularity, supremacy. There are other Astor wives, yes, but only one who matters. William Waldorf Astor disagrees. He is Caroline's nephew, son of her husband's older brother John Jacob Astor III. By the rules of primogeniture and patrilineal succession, his wife should be the Mrs. Astor. His father was the eldest son. His branch is senior. His wife Mary deserves the title. Caroline, as wife of the younger brother, should defer. Caroline does not defer. William Waldorf seethes. The social slight festers. He is wealthy beyond measure. When his father dies in February 1890, he inherits $100 million, roughly $3.4 billion in today's currency. He has money, status, properties across 2 continents. But he does not have the one thing he wants: recognition that his wife, not his aunt, is the rightful Mrs. Astor. Caroline keeps the title. William Waldorf decides to make her pay. In 1891, he moves his entire family to England. His declaration is quoted in newspapers. America is no longer a place for a gentleman to live. The statement drips with contempt. For Caroline, for New York society, for the country itself. He takes his $100 million and leaves. But before he goes, he plants a bomb. He owns the mansion next to Caroline's brownstone at 34th Street, the house where his father lived, where he grew up. In 1890, he has it demolished, completely. The wrecking crews tear it down to the foundation, and in its place, he builds a hotel. The Waldorf Hotel opens in 1893. The insult is multi-layered and exquisite. First, hotels are considered beneath respectable society. They are commercial, common, places where strangers come and go. To live next to a hotel is to live next to chaos, transience, the mixing of classes. Second, the Waldorf is designed to tower over Caroline's brownstone. It physically overshadows her home. Third, the noise is relentless. Construction, then operation, deliveries, guests, carriages arriving at all hours, music, voices, the constant churn of commerce. Caroline's privacy is destroyed. Her quiet block becomes a tourist destination. People gawk at the Waldorf. They gawk at her house. The woman who controlled access to the 400 now cannot control access to her own street. The effect is exactly what William Waldorf intended. Caroline is driven out. She decides to fight back. By 1894, construction begins on a new mansion. Not a replacement, a palace. Caroline and her son, John Jacob Astor IV, commission Richard Morris Hunt, America's premier architect. Trained at the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, Hunt has designed mansions for the Vanderbilts. He understands scale. He understands symbolism. The location is 5th Avenue and 65th Street, uptown, fashionable, across from Central Park, away from commerce, away from William Waldorf, away from the Waldorf Hotel's noise and crowds. The design is a double mansion. 2 separate residences, 845th Avenue for John Jacob IV and his family, 841 Fifth Avenue for Caroline, but appearing from the street as a single enormous structure. French Renaissance style, inspired by the Château de Blois. Limestone exterior, steep slate roof, twin grand staircases side by side. The houses share a ballroom. The ballroom holds 1,200 guests, not 400, 1,200. Triple the capacity of the old brownstone. The message is clear. Caroline has not retreated, she has escalated. Construction takes 2 years. The mansion is completed in 1896. Caroline is now 65. She moves in. The old brownstone at 34th Street is sold, demolished. William Waldorf's Waldorf Hotel now stands next to empty lots, its victory hollow. But Caroline's son, John Jacob Astor IV, isn't finished. In 1897, he opens the Astoria Hotel, directly adjacent to the Waldorf, larger, more luxurious. The name itself is a claim, Astoria, the right to the Astor name. The hotel is grander than anything William Waldorf built. The statement is unsubtle. You started this. We finish it. The two hotels stand side by side, monuments to family hatred, architectural embodiments of a title dispute. What does this cost? Millions. The double mansion, the Astoria Hotel, the furnishings, the ongoing maintenance. Both sides bleed money to prove a point. Who is the Mrs. Astor? Who has the right to the name? Who wins? No one wins. The two hotels eventually merge operations, becoming the Waldorf Astoria, the hyphen that socialite Louise McAllister calls, with weary irony, the hyphen. The feud that tore the family apart, that cost millions, that built competing hotels and forced Caroline from her home, ends in a partnership. A combined business. The two enemies joined. William Waldorf never returns to America. He becomes a British citizen in 1899. In 1917, he is made Viscount Astor. He gets the title he wanted, just not in the country he wanted it. He dies in 1919, wealthy and titled and permanently exiled. Caroline gets the mansion she wanted, the ballroom for 1,200, the distance from commerce and crowds. But the cost is exile too. She's left the block she ruled for 30 years, the neighborhood where she built her power. The 34th Street brownstone is gone. The empire has moved. What happens when pride costs more than money? You spend the money anyway. You build hotels to spite your aunt. You build mansions to escape your nephew. You demolish homes to make points. You fracture families beyond repair. Both sides win. Both sides lose. The hotels merge. The fortune dilutes. The family splits. And the title that started it all, the Mrs. Astor, dies with Caroline. The feud is over. The damage is permanent. The lesson is simple. Even unlimited money can't buy back what pride destroys. February 1896. Caroline Astor becomes a resident of Upper Fifth Avenue. The double mansion at 65th Street is complete. Limestone walls 4 stories high, steep slate roof. From the street, it appears as one enormous structure, though inside it divides into 2 separate residences. 845th Avenue for her son, John Jacob, and his family. 841 Fifth Avenue for Caroline. Walk inside. The entrance hall is faced with marble. Busts of Astor ancestors line the walls. This room leads to the Great Hall, where a large cantilevered staircase rises. Marble herringbone floors, stained glass filtering winter light. The scale announces immediately, "You have entered something extraordinary. Turn right into the reception room, styled in the Adam manner." This is where Caroline receives guests on formal occasions, standing beneath her life-size portrait by Carolus Duran. The same portrait from the old brownstone, now hung in a room 3 times as large. The symbolism persists. You are in her house, under her gaze. Beyond the reception rooms lies the ballroom. The ballroom is the largest room in the house. It spans the entire rear, rising 4 stories to the roof. The walls are paneled in satin, hung with Caroline's art collection. The floor is marble herringbone, covered with 4 massive oriental rugs and 16 long, narrow Persian rugs, all red. Colourful peacock-feathered rugs dot the spaces between. From the ceiling hang 4 enormous crystal chandeliers, each with pearl strings linking one to another. At one end, a huge marble chimneypiece rises to the ceiling, decorated with 2 carved caryatid sculptures, supporting a painted panel depicting a gala at the Palace of Versailles. Irony, perhaps, or aspiration. In front of the fireplace stand Louis XVI candelabra. Between them, a raised dais covered in fur blankets. On top, a red satin divan, Caroline's throne. The ballroom holds 1,200 people. Not 400, 1,200, 3 times the capacity of the old brownstone. The 400 can now fit comfortably with room for 800 more. The expansion is strategic. Caroline has not abandoned exclusivity. She has made it more potent by having the space to be selective within a larger crowd. The house employs modern technology still rare in residential buildings, electric light throughout, central heating from massive boilers in the basement, elevators, indoor plumbing, multiple bathrooms with running hot and cold water, fire alarms, call buttons set into the woodwork of principal rooms, summoning servants invisibly. For 1896, this is the future. The mansion is one of the largest in New York, even in an age of excess. It cost millions to build. It costs thousands monthly to maintain. Coal, staff wages, repairs, taxes. The arithmetic is daunting, but Caroline has the fortune, for now. The January balls resume in the new house. Invitations go out each year with the same simple message. Mrs. Astor at home, January 9th at 10 o'clock. The date varies slightly year to year, but the format never changes. The simplicity is power. No explanation needed. If you receive it, you know what it means. Guests arrive at 11, typically. After midnight, before everyone has come. Carriages line 5th Avenue. Footmen open doors. Guests enter the marble hall, proceed to the Great Hall, ascend or move to the reception room, where Caroline waits beneath her portrait. Then into the ballroom, where 1,200 can gather, but only 600 to 800 typically do. Music plays. Victor Herbert's orchestra sometimes. Champagne flows. The chandeliers blaze. The room glitters with diamonds, silk, pearls. Conversations hum. Laughter echoes off marble. For a few hours, the machinery of society performs flawlessly. Everyone knows their place. Everyone plays their role. Caroline presides from her divan on the raised dais. She receives, she observes, she judges. The queen on her throne, watching her kingdom. This continues for 9 years. 9 January balls in the new mansion, each one reinforcing her position, each one reminding New York who decides what matters. And then, January 8th, 1905, 800 guests arrive. Caroline is in her 70s now. Her health is fading, though few know the extent. She dresses for the ball in purple velvet trimmed with sable. At her throat, her wrists, in her hair, diamonds. Jewels that supposedly belonged to Marie Antoinette. Diamonds that once adorned a queen who lost her head. The symbolism is almost too perfect, too ironic. Caroline wears the jewels of a woman beheaded by revolution, presiding over a system built on exclusion and exploitation, at the peak of her power and the beginning of her decline. She descends the grand staircase glittering like the chandelier. The guests applaud. The orchestra plays. The night unfolds as it always has. Perfectly choreographed, rigidly controlled, beautiful. No one knows this is the end. The following summer, Caroline does not return to her Newport mansion, Beechwood. Her health prevents it. By 1908, rumors swirl that she has suffered a nervous breakdown. She will not host another ball. The January 8, 1905 event, with its 800 guests and Marie Antoinette's diamonds, is her last. The ballroom that holds 1,200 will never be full again, not under Caroline's rule. The palace she fought so hard to build, the mansion that cost millions, the ballroom that tripled her capacity, stands ready. But the queen who commanded it is fading. What does magnificence look like when you get it? Limestone and marble, crystal and satin, 1,200 capacity, electric light, elevators, a throne draped in fur, a portrait watching everything, diamonds from a beheaded queen. It looks like victory. It looks like forever. It looks like power that cannot be touched. And then it ends. Not with drama, not with revolution, with age, with illness, with a mind that begins to slip. The palace remains. The queen falters. The ballroom goes dark. Beautiful. Yes, but that's just the facade. Behind it, the last ball, the fading queen, the diamonds of the doomed. Magnificence at its peak, already beginning its fall. After the last ball, something shifts. Caroline does not return to Newport in the summer of 1905. The decision is attributed to health, though the details remain vague. She stays in the Fifth Avenue mansion, the Great Chateau, as some call it, the palace built to escape her nephew's hotel. The ballroom for 1,200 goes dark. The rooms fall into what one historian will later describe as splendid isolation. Furniture is covered with dust sheets. Chandeliers remain unlit. The ballroom, which rose 4 stories and held 800 guests just months ago, sits empty. The silence is profound. No music, no laughter, no carriages arriving. Just Caroline, her staff, and the echoing halls. Her son, John Jacob Astor IV, lives in the other half of the double mansion, with his wife Ava and their son Vincent. But the marriage is unhappy. Ava is cold, negligent. She will later admit publicly that she married him only for money. The couple is often estranged, frequently separate. The big house is mainly empty except for staff. Caroline lives alone in her half. The routine begins to fracture. In the mornings, she receives her butler. They discuss details for dinners that will never take place. She goes over guest lists for imaginary balls. The butler nods, takes notes perhaps. What else can he do? She is still Mrs. Astor. He is still her employee. The conversations continue day after day, planning events that exist only in her mind. In the evenings, after her customary carriage ride through Central Park, she returns to the silent house. She receives it as she once received guests, enters, surveys. The rooms are empty. She seems not to notice, or perhaps she sees something else. People who aren't there, parties from decades past. The dressing ritual continues. She puts on her finest Worth gowns, fastens her jewels, diamonds at her throat, her wrists, her hair. She descends the grand staircase, glittering like she always did. But there are no guests, no orchestra, no applause. She reaches the bottom, stands in front of her life-size portrait by Carolus Duran, and there she greets them. The imaginary guests, the ghosts of utmost social distinction. She exchanges pleasantries with people long dead, discusses the weather, the season, the latest news. Her voice is gracious, practiced, perfect. The performance is flawless. The audience doesn't exist. At one point, according to accounts, she becomes convinced she is pregnant. She begins preparing a nursery. She is in her 70s. The delusion is complete. Her mind has retreated to the past, not just remembering, living there. The present dissolves. What remains is memory, fractured and rearranged, replaying endlessly. Rumors swirl through New York. Mrs. Astor is unwell. Mrs. Astor is in decline. The whispers spread. People who once sought her approval now gossip about her collapse. The cruelty is casual, the schadenfreude barely hidden. In 1908, a reporter from the Delineator, a women's fashion and general interest magazine, somehow secures an interview. Caroline speaks about her role as society leader as if she still holds it. Present tense, active. Her words: "I am not vain enough to believe that New York will not be able to get along without me. Many women will rise up to fill my place." The statement is strange, half lucid, half fantasy. She hints at her mortality, acknowledges her eventual absence, but she speaks of her role as if it's current, ongoing, undiminished. The reporter notes the dissonance, but publishes the interview. It will be her last. Later that year, late 1908, Caroline falls. The grand staircase, the one she descended in diamonds, the one she climbed and descended for ghost parties. Marble steps, no carpet to soften them. She falls, hard. The servants find her moaning on the floor. Her halo of white hair is caked in blood. She has struck her head. The wounds are severe. A doctor comes, stitches the cuts. The physical injuries heal. Skin knits back together. Scars form. But her mind, already fragile, never recovers. After the fall, what little clarity remained vanishes. The woman who controlled access to the 400, who decided who mattered in New York, no longer knows what year it is. October 30th, 1908. Caroline Astor dies at age 78. The cause is listed as heart palpitations. She has been confined to bed. Her son, John Jacob Astor IV, and his wife, Ava, are at her bedside. Only her daughter, Carrie, is with her in the final hour. The news is not a surprise. Rumors of her decline have circulated for years. Newspapers pay tribute. The Mrs. Astor is dead. Not just a woman, an era. The Gilded Age, which she embodied and enforced, ends with her. Her funeral is held in the Fifth Avenue mansion. The ballroom that held 1,200 is filled one last time, not with guests in silk and diamonds, with mourners in black. The casket rests where her throne once stood. The chandeliers are lit. The silence is absolute. She is buried beside her husband at Trinity Cemetery, West 153rd Street. In 1914, 6 years after her death, her daughter Carrie will erect a 39-foot-tall cenotaph in her memory at the small cemetery at Broadway and Wall Street. A monument, a marker, a reminder that Caroline Astor once existed and once mattered. Years later, in 1928, Edith Wharton will publish a short story called After Holbein. The main character, Mrs. Evelyn Jasper, is clearly based on Caroline, a society matron in dementia, dressing for parties that don't happen, receiving guests who are ghosts. Wharton was Caroline's cousin. She attended events at the mansion. She may have witnessed the decline firsthand. The story is both tribute and epitaph. What happens when you lose control of everything, including yourself? You descend the stairs in diamonds for an audience that doesn't exist. You plan balls that will never happen. You greet the dead as if they're still alive. Your mind retreats to a past that felt safer, more certain, more yours. The woman who controlled everything lost control of the only thing that mattered, her own mind. The palace she built stands. The fortune remains for now. But the queen is gone. And in her final years, she was already gone. Living in a past she could no longer distinguish from the present, hosting parties for ghosts, wearing jewels for no one. Beautiful? No. Tragic? Absolutely. Human? Finally. Yes. The villain becomes a victim. The gatekeeper is locked out of her own mind. The queen who decided who mattered forgets who she is. The mansion endures, for now. The dynasty continues, for now, but the center is gone, and without Caroline, the machinery begins to fail. Caroline is gone. The mansion passes entirely to her son, John Jacob Astor IV. He is 44 years old, the richest Astor, the wealthiest man in New York, worth approximately $87 million, roughly $2.6 billion in today's currency. He decides to transform the house. The double mansion, with its twin staircases and divided spaces, becomes one. He hires the architectural firm of Carrere and Hastings. They remove the two grand staircases. In their place, one massive entrance hall with smaller staircases on either side. Caroline's half is completely redone. The main rooms are renovated. What was two residences becomes the largest mansion in New York. In February 1910, John Jacob hosts a party to unveil the transformation. He invites the 400. The ballroom is filled again. Music plays, champagne flows. The mansion, perfected at last, is shown to society. John Jacob stands in his mother's old territory, now his. The heir, the master, the man who owns it all. He will enjoy it for less than 2 years. His marriage to Ava Willing has been miserable for years, cold, loveless. She later admits publicly that she only married him for his money. In 1909, they divorce. The split is bitter. Ava keeps custody of their son, Vincent, and daughter, Alice. John Jacob keeps the mansion, the fortune, and his freedom. In 1911, he marries again. The bride is Madeline Talmadge, Force. She's 18 years old. He is 47. The age difference shocks New York society. The same people who attended his mother's balls now gossip and condemn. The scandal is immediate, intense, unrelenting. John Jacob and Madeline flee. They travel to Europe, then Egypt. Months away from New York, away from judgment, away from the whispers. Madeline becomes pregnant. By early 1912, she is 5 months along. They decide it's time to return, face society, reclaim the mansion. They book passage home on a new ship, the largest, most luxurious liner afloat, the RMS Titanic. Maiden voyage, unsinkable, they say. April 14th, 1912. The Titanic is 4 days into its crossing. The night is clear, cold, calm. Just before midnight, the ship strikes an iceberg. The hull tears open below the waterline. Water floods the forward compartments. The ship begins to sink. John Jacob Astor IV is the wealthiest passenger aboard. His net worth exceeds the value of the ship itself. He has money, status, influence. None of it matters now. He helps Madeline to the boat deck. She is pregnant, frightened, wearing a life jacket that fits poorly over her swollen belly. Lifeboat number 4 is being loaded. Women and children first. The crew is strict. John Jacob helps his wife into the boat. She sits. He stands on deck. He asks if he can join her. She is pregnant, he explains. She needs him. The crew refuses. Women and children first. The rule is absolute. He accepts it. He tells Madeleine he will follow soon. There will be other boats. She will be safe. He will see her shortly. It's a lie. Perhaps he knows it. Perhaps he believes it. Either way, he stays. Lifeboat 4 is lowered. Madeleine looks up at her husband on the deck. He is 47 years old, worth $87 million, owner of the largest mansion in New York. He waves. The boat descends. The distance grows. She will never see him again. John Jacob Astor IV dies when the Titanic sinks at 2:20 a.m., April 15, 1912. His body is recovered days later, identified by the initials sewn into his coat. He is buried with full honors, the richest man to die on the Titanic, the man who had everything except the one thing he needed, a seat in a lifeboat. His will, written before the second marriage, divides the estate unevenly. Vincent Astor, his son from the first marriage, receives the bulk. At age 20, just months after his father's death, turning 21, Vincent becomes one of the youngest, richest men in America. The mansion, the real estate empire, the fortune, all of it passes to him. The unborn child, John Jacob Astor VI, born August 14, 1912, 5 months after his father's death, receives $3 million to be paid when he turns 21, significant by any measure. But compared to Vincent's inheritance, it's a fraction, an insult. The will was never rewritten. John Jacob died before he could fix it. The youngest son will always regard the distribution as deeply unfair. Many others agree. Madeline, the pregnant widow, receives the mansion temporarily but must relinquish it if she remarries. In 1916, she remarries William K. Dick. She leaves. The mansion passes entirely to Vincent, a 25-year-old who now owns one of the largest houses in New York, a fortune worth tens of millions, and the weight of a dynasty he never asked for. Can wealth protect you from fate? John Jacob Astor IV had $87 million. It bought him the finest cabin on the finest ship. It bought him influence, status, a mansion with 65 fireplaces, and a ballroom for 1,200. It bought him everything except survival. The iceberg doesn't care about your net worth. The ocean doesn't care about your name. The lifeboat has room for your wife, not you. Money buys comfort. It buys power. It buys escape from many things. But not everything. Not death. Not fate. Not the randomness of a ship hitting ice in the North Atlantic on a calm April night. The mansion he perfected stands empty. The ballroom he unveiled sits dark. The fortune passes to a son barely old enough to manage it. And somewhere in the cold Atlantic, the richest passenger lies at the bottom with 1,500 others, all equal in the end. The transformation is complete. Not of the mansion, of the family. Caroline lost her mind. John Jacob lost his life. Vincent inherits a burden he didn't choose. The dynasty continues, but it's cracking. The pressure is building. The cost is mounting. And the mansion, the palace built to last forever, has 14 years left. Vincent Astor is 20 years old when his father drowns. The inheritance is staggering. The mansion, the real estate empire, millions in liquid assets. He becomes one of the youngest, richest men in America overnight. The weight of it is immediate. His stepmother, Madeline, the pregnant teenage widow, lives in the mansion temporarily under the terms of the will. Vincent lives there too with his wife, Helen Huntington. The arrangement is awkward. In 1916, Madeline remarries. She marries William K. Dick and relinquishes her claim. Vincent becomes sole owner. The palace is his, all of it. The ballroom for 1,200, the limestone facade, the marble staircases, the 65 fireplaces, the electric lights, the elevators, the art, the furnishings, the throne where his grandmother sat, everything. He cannot afford it. The arithmetic changes in 1913. Congress ratifies the 16th Amendment. The federal income tax is born. For the first time, the wealthy pay a significant share of income directly to the government. The rates start low. They rise quickly for top earners. Each year, Vincent writes checks to Washington. Money that previously paid for coal, staff wages, and property taxes now goes elsewhere. The income from the real estate empire is still substantial, but it's no longer enough. The mansion was built in an era when income flowed untaxed to the owner. That era is over. The cost of maintaining the house remains constant. The money available to pay for it shrinks. Property taxes rise too. Fifth Avenue is transforming. The residential character of the neighborhood erodes. Commerce arrives. Shops, offices, hotels. Development pressure increases. Tax assessments climb to reflect the land's commercial potential. Other families face the same squeeze. In 1926, Emily Vanderbilt sells the northern section of the Vanderbilt mansion for $3.5 million, roughly $50 million today, because she can no longer afford the taxes. Vincent looks at the ledgers, the monthly bills, the coal deliveries, the staff wages, the repairs, the taxes. The arithmetic is relentless. The expenses exceed the available income. He's spending principal, drawing down capital. The fortune is large, yes, but not infinite. At this pace, within years, the reserves will deplete. The house will consume everything. He makes a decision. He prefers the family's Long Island estate anyway. Quieter, smaller, manageable. The Fifth Avenue mansion is too much, too large, too expensive, too tied to a past that no longer exists. His grandmother's ghost parties, his father's drowned ambition. The mansion is a monument to a world that ended. In 1924, the contents are auctioned. The furnishings, the art, the rugs, the chandeliers, the throne, Caroline's divan covered in fur blankets, the crystal, the silver. Everything movable is sold. Piece by piece, the interior dissolves. Strangers bid, dealers acquire. The objects scatter across the country, into other homes, other lives. Vincent saves one thing, his father's bedroom. He has it removed carefully, every panel, every fixture. The entire room is dismantled and transported to his new, smaller townhouse at 130 East 80th Street. A tribute, a memory, one room preserved, the rest gone. In 1926, Vincent sells the mansion itself. The buyer is a developer. The land is more valuable than the building. The mansion, one of the largest in New York, built by Richard Morris Hunt, completed 30 years ago, will be demolished. Completely. The phrase Vincent uses, according to later accounts, is precise. He could not afford the extravagant expense of the Fifth Avenue mansion. Extravagant expense. The same pressure Biltmore faced. The same arithmetic that destroyed dynasties. The cost of magnificence, measured monthly, compounding, endless. The wrecking crews arrive. Limestone comes down block by block. The ballroom that held 1,200 is sledgehammered into rubble. The staircases where Caroline descended in diamonds are broken apart. The marble is hauled away. The chandeliers, already sold, are gone. What remains is foundation and memory. The site is purchased by Temple Emmanuel. President Louis Marshall and Building Committee Chairman Benjamin Mordecai oversee the project. Architects Robert D. Cohn, Charles Butler, and Clarence S. Stein design the new structure. Early Romanesque style with Byzantine influences. The temple will be the largest Reform temple in the world. 103 feet high, 100 feet wide, one of the largest of any Jewish denomination. It rises where the mansion stood, where Caroline greeted ghosts, where John Jacob unveiled his perfected palace, where Vincent inherited a burden he couldn't carry. The temple is completed and consecrated. The mansion is erased. 30 years. That's all it lasted. From completion in 1896 to destruction in 1926. One generation. What was lost? A Richard Morris Hunt masterpiece. The ballroom for 1,200. The grand staircases, the art collection, the European furnishings, the throne, the portrait of Caroline by Carolus Duran, the physical embodiment of Gilded Age excess and power, all of it demolished, hauled away, forgotten except in photographs and auction catalogues. What replaced it? A temple, a place of worship, a community center, a symbol of a different kind of permanence. The irony is profound. The mansion that excluded Jews now becomes the site of the largest Reform temple in the world. The palace built on opium and rent becomes sacred ground. Vincent moves into his townhouse. One bedroom from the mansion preserved. The rest, memory. He has escaped the extravagant expense. He has saved the family fortune from the house that was eating it. But he has also ended something. The physical manifestation of Astor dominance is gone. The palace where the Mrs. Astor ruled is rubble. How long can magnificence last? 30 years. From 1896 to 1926. One generation. Long enough to see Caroline lose her mind. Long enough to see John Jacob drown. Long enough to see Vincent realize he cannot afford his own inheritance. The mansion stood at the corner of 5th Avenue and 65th Street for 3 decades. Now a temple stands there. The Astors are gone. The 400 are scattered. The dynasty continues elsewhere in smaller spaces, with diminished power. The extravagant expense defeated them. Not immediately, not dramatically, but steadily, predictably. The arithmetic of magnificence. It costs more than you think, more than you have, more than anyone can sustain forever. Beautiful? It was. Gone? Completely. Lesson. Clear. Every palace has a lifespan. Every fortune has a limit. Every dream of permanence ends. The mansion is demolished in 1926. The fortune remains. Vincent Astor still controls vast real estate holdings. The family name still carries weight. But something essential is already gone. Not money, not yet. Something harder to quantify. Drive, hunger, the work ethic that built the empire in the first place. John Jacob Astor I smuggled opium, built a fur trading monopoly, and bought land relentlessly until he died at 84, still wishing he'd bought more. His son William expanded the holdings to 700 properties. His grandson, William Jr., married Caroline and created social machinery that ruled New York for decades. 3 generations of builders, accumulators, enforcers. The 4th generation inherits. The 5th generation spends. The 6th generation barters for food. The pattern is documented, predictable, almost inevitable. By the 5th and 6th generations, no surviving member inherits the work ethic that went into acquiring the fortune in the first place. They inherit money. They inherit name recognition. They inherit celebrity. What they don't inherit, the discipline to preserve it. The fortune dilutes with each generation, divided among heirs, taxed heavily at each transfer, diminished by inflation, poor investments, extravagance. The Astor real estate empire, once unchallengeable, fragments. Properties are sold, holdings liquidate. The trust John Jacob Astor I created in 1834 dissolves in 1919, distributing 125 parcels among multiple heirs. What was concentrated becomes scattered. What was power becomes memory. By the late 20th century, the decline is visible. Not in mansions, those are long gone. In smaller, sadder ways. The trajectory is clear. Up for a century, down for another. Rokeby Mansion sits in upstate New York. William Backhouse Astor Sr. built it in the 19th century as a country estate. For decades, it symbolized Astor permanence. Solid, respectable, a retreat from the city. By 2013, it symbolizes something else entirely. The mansion is falling apart. Roof leaks, plaster crumbles, paint peels. Rooms are uninhabitable. What remains occupied is squalid. Heat is unreliable. Repairs are unaffordable. The estate, once proud, is now what one account describes as a dilapidated flophouse. The residents are Astor descendants, direct line. The bloodline that once controlled Manhattan real estate, that decided who mattered in New York society, that wore Marie Antoinette's diamonds. They live in poverty, not genteel poverty, not reduced circumstances with dignity intact, actual poverty. They barter for food with nearby residents to survive, trade labor for groceries, services for necessities. The landlords of New York cannot afford to eat. In 2013, Alexandra Aldrich, an Astor descendant who grew up at Rokeby, publishes a memoir. The title and content are revealing. Her quote, "I lived a double life. Our poverty was the big secret. The contrast is crushing. The name Astor still means wealth to outsiders. Inside the walls of Rokeby, it means nothing. The name is a burden, a reminder of what was lost, what can never be recovered. The irony is almost poetic. Some of the last heirs of the legendary Astor family living in the family's nearly 200-year-old Rokeby mansion in abject squalor, from landlords to tenants of their own decay, from gatekeepers to forgotten, from the 400 to bartering for food. But the story has one more degradation. Brooke Astor marries Vincent Astor. She becomes the final prominent Astor, a philanthropist managing the Vincent Astor Foundation, funding libraries, education, cultural institutions. For decades, she rehabilitates the name. The Astors in her iteration are benefactors, generous, civic-minded. The opium and exploitation and social cruelty fade into history. Brooke is beloved, respected, a symbol of old money used well. Then, in her final years, her son Anthony Marshall is convicted of elder abuse. The crime, stealing from his elderly mother. Neglect, financial manipulation, forcing her to live in squalor while he looted her accounts. The trial is public, ugly, detailed. In 2009, Anthony Marshall is sentenced. The conviction marks symbolically the end of the Astor good name. Not just decline, disgrace. The family that once excluded others for insufficient breeding now excludes itself through criminal behavior. The dynasty that began with opium smuggling ends with elder abuse. The symmetry is grim. The timeline of dissolution is stark. 1848, John Jacob Astor I dies worth $20 million. 1875, William Backhouse Astor Sr. dies worth $50 million. 1912, John Jacob Astor IV dies worth $87 million. 2013, descendants barter for food at Rokeby. 165 years. From richest man in America to poverty, from controlling 1/3 of Manhattan real estate to unable to afford repairs on a single upstate mansion, from the landlords of New York to begging neighbors for groceries. How does a dynasty die? Not quickly, not cleanly, slowly, across generations, each one a little weaker, a little less disciplined, a little more entitled. The fortune divides, the work ethic evaporates, the celebrity remains longer than the money. By the time the name is all that's left, it's too late. The name alone can't pay bills. The mansion at 5th Avenue and 65th Street is gone, demolished in 1926. A temple stands there now. The brownstone at 34th Street was demolished in the 1890s. The Waldorf Astoria Hotel that replaced it was razed in 1929. The Empire State Building rises on that site. The Waldorf Astoria moved to Park Avenue. The original location was redeveloped. Every physical trace of Astor dominance in Manhattan has been erased or repurposed. What remains? Place names: Astoria, Queens, Astor Place, street signs, memories in history books, a cautionary tale about what happens when fortunes built on exploitation collapse under their own weight. And Rokeby, still standing, barely, still occupied by descendants who carry the name but not the fortune. The mansion is a ruin. The family is scattered. The dynasty is dead. From opium to real estate to social power to extravagant expense to demolition to poverty. The arc is complete. The fall is total. The lesson is clear. No fortune lasts forever. No name guarantees survival, and the higher you rise, the farther you fall. The Astors proved you can build an empire on suffering. You just can't make it last. The mansions are gone. The fortune is dissipated. The dynasty is dead. What remains? Place names. Astoria, Queens, named for John Jacob Astor I. Astor Place in Manhattan. Astor Row in Harlem. Street signs marking territory the family once controlled. The Waldorf Astoria Hotel, though the name moved to Park Avenue in 1931, leaving the original site behind. The phrase the 400 still used to describe social elites, though most people have forgotten where it came from. Forgotten that it began with a ballroom capacity and became a weapon of exclusion. What was destroyed? Everything physical. The 845th Avenue mansion, demolished in 1926. The 34th Street brownstone, demolished in the 1890s. The Waldorf Astoria complex that replaced it, razed in 1929 to build the Empire State Building. Every Astor Palace in Manhattan erased, replaced by temples, skyscrapers, commercial buildings. Not one survives. Family unity destroyed by feuds. William Waldorf versus Caroline. The split permanent, the fortune divided, the name tarnished, the mystique evaporated through scandal, elder abuse, poverty. The good name Brooke tried to restore, finished. The empire itself, dissolved. The real estate sold. The trust terminated. The holdings scattered among too many heirs with too little discipline. The concentration that created power replaced by diffusion that guaranteed irrelevance. Who paid for the Astor fortune? The accounting is precise. The costs are documented. First, Chinese victims. 3 million addicted by the 1830s. 10% of the population by 1890. Families destroyed. Lives shortened. A society crippled by the drug John Jacob smuggled by the ton. Hundreds of thousands of pounds. The foundation of the fortune, mass addiction. Second, Manhattan tenants, thousands of them, paying rent on land they built on but could never own. 20-year leases that always ended. Homes they improved that enriched only the landlord. Families displaced when leases expired. Wealth transferred upward, permanently, generation after generation. 700 properties, thousands of tenants, millions in rent collected. The mechanism was efficient. The cost was invisible to those who collected. Third, servants, paid $18 to $30 a month, living in top-floor rooms that were too hot in summer, too cold in winter. Dismissed instantly for single mistakes, isolated from family, expected to remain invisible while maintaining magnificence. The ballroom for 1,200 required dozens of hands to clean, prepare, serve. Those hands were paid almost nothing. The throne Caroline sat on required someone to polish it, someone to arrange the fur blankets, someone to ensure the red satin divan was perfect, that someone earned $18 a month. Fourth, the excluded. Jews, merchants, new money. Anyone Caroline deemed insufficient. Social rejection as weapon. Careers destroyed by a snub. Marriages prevented by whispers. Entire families marked as unsuitable. The cruelty was systematic, deliberate, sustained for decades. The cost was psychological, social, generational. Exclusion as sport. Power as entertainment. Fifth, Caroline herself. Lost her mind. Spent her final years greeting guests who didn't exist. Discussing menus with a butler for dinners that would never happen. Descending stairs dressed for parties long past. Convinced she was pregnant at 78. Falling down marble stairs, blood in white hair. Died believing she still ruled. The palace consumed her sanity. The power ate her mind. Sixth, John Jacob Astor IV died at 47 on the Titanic, trying to save his pregnant teenage wife. The scandal of their marriage, the exile to Egypt, the return, the iceberg, lifeboat number 4, refused entry. Last seen standing on deck smoking a cigarette. Body recovered days later, crushed, drowned. The mansion he'd just renovated stood empty. The wife he saved remarried 4 years later. The fortune divided awkwardly because he died before rewriting the will. Everything he planned, interrupted. 7th, Vincent. Inherited at 21. Couldn't afford the extravagant expense. Sold the mansion after 30 years. Saved only his father's bedroom. 1 room, the rest demolished. The burden of magnificence, too heavy. The arithmetic, unforgiving. The heir unable to maintain what he inherited. The palace defeated him. 8th, later descendants. Bartering for food at Rokeby in 2013. Living in squalor in the family mansion. The poverty a secret. The name a curse. From landlords to beggars in 5 generations. The trajectory, complete. The fall, total. The arithmetic is simple. The formula is clear. Opium becomes real estate. Real estate becomes social power. Social power becomes family feud. Feud becomes revenge hotels. Revenge becomes magnificent mansion. Mansion stands 30 years. Then demolished. 20 million in 1848 becomes 87 million in 1912, becomes extravagant expense in 1926, becomes poverty in 2013. You can build a fortune on addiction. You can police society through cruelty. You can erect palaces that hold 1,200 guests in ballrooms 4 stories high. You can wear Marie Antoinette's jewels and sit on fur-covered thrones and descend staircases designed for dramatic entrances. But you cannot build permanence on shame. You cannot inherit discipline. You cannot preserve what you refuse to adapt. Every empire built on exploitation contains its own collapse. The timeline varies. The result doesn't. January 8, 1905. Caroline Astor descends the staircase one final time. Purple velvet gown. Marie Antoinette's jewels around her neck. 800 guests waiting below. The ballroom glitters. The orchestra plays. This is her last ball. She doesn't know it yet, but her mind is already leaving, already retreating to a past that felt safer, more certain, more hers. 3 years later, she descends this same staircase, dressed for parties that will never happen. The butler nods patiently. The guests don't exist. Her mind lives in memory now. When servants find her fallen on the marble, blood matting her white hair, her body will heal. Her mind never will. Her son dies on the Titanic. Her grandson sells the mansion because he cannot afford the extravagant expense. The palace stands exactly 30 years. Then, demolished. A temple rises where she descended her stairs. The Empire State Building rises where the Waldorf Astoria Hotel once stood, built on the site of her former 34th Street brownstone. Every physical trace erased or repurposed. Who paid for the Astor fortune? Chinese mothers who watched sons die for opium. 10 tons of Turkish opium. Tenants who built on land they'd never own. Maids who earned $18 monthly and slept in rooms too hot or cold. A woman who lost her mind greeting ghosts. A man who drowned trying to save his pregnant wife. A grandson who couldn't afford his inheritance. Descendants who barter for food. How much does a dynasty cost? 10 tons of Turkish opium. Hundreds of thousands of pounds more. 700 properties. Millions spent on revenge hotels. 65 fireplaces. 1,200 ghosts. 30 years. Everything. The mansion is gone. The fortune dissipated. The family scattered. The 400 dissolved. What remains are place names, memories, warnings. Every fortune has a foundation. Every mansion has a cost. Every dynasty has an end. These aren't just buildings. They're receipts. Paid for with real suffering. Lost through real failure. Remembered as real lessons. The Astors proved you can buy magnificence. You just can't make it last. They proved you can control society through cruelty. You just can't control what comes after. They proved you can build palaces on addiction and exploitation. You just can't make them permanent. Every mansion has its ghost. Every fortune has its victims. Every dream has its price. And sometimes the price is everything.